Welcome back to the Power to Rise channel. I'm so glad you're here. I have a question for you. Have you ever felt overwhelmed trying to keep track of job applications, follow ups, interviews, all the things? If you're in a job search process, I know this is going to sound familiar to you, and I want you to know that you are not alone. More importantly, today we are going to fix that. I am Rafat Fields. I'm the founder and CEO of Power to Rise, a company that I created to help the leaders who are doing the work to improve our community day in and day out. You're making a difference. You've got your hands deeply in the soil, and you may be going unnoticed at the tables where decisions and resources are being allocated. I believe that technology and AI specifically has the potential to be an opportunity equalizer. I'm committed to using my platform to sharing what I learned, sharing what I know with as many people as possible so that you can take advantage of this and start building your own digital platform where you can build relationships, increase influence, and start to affect policy and resource decision making that's happening in your local community. Today's training is going to be focused on someone who is looking to go through a job search process because they want to secure a higher level opportunity within their company, or perhaps they're making a change. But before we get into it, I want to share a little bit of my personal story with you. Over a decade ago, I thought I wanted to go back to school and get a master's degree in information systems. And it was really challenging. I actually discontinued the program after a semester because I couldn't articulate it at the time. But what I discovered, or what I encountered, was that I was having a very difficult time breaking out the visualization of complex concepts that involved IT structures. Now, that time ended up serving me extremely well because even in that short semester, I got a really good foundation about database infrastructure, which would be great because later in my career, I would go on to sell software. And my ability to work with our tech and implementation teams who were designing and deploying solutions in large scale hospital systems, I was able to translate so much better because I understood the fundamentals and the layers behind how databases were structured at the introductory level. That's what we're going to do today. Now, I have some really good news for you. When I was going through this program forever ago, I was learning on Microsoft Access. It was a very robust but very specific type of database solution. Today's solutions are cloud based, they're very user friendly, they're highly intuitive. What that means is that if you're not an IT professional who has been deeply trained and knows how to write code, you can still get a lot of excellent benefit and you can learn how to use the solutions that we're going to be talking about. Today, we're going to be building in Notion, which I absolutely love. Notion is very simple, it's very easy to navigate, and more importantly, I think the thing that sets it apart is it gives you the ability to customize it at a visual layer that I haven't quite seen with some of the other platforms. If you need to be able to come into a system, you want to be able to personalize it, play around with the way things are structured, but you also may want to color code or bring in images and pictures that are really meaningful to you. It helps you form an emotional connection to whatever the work is that you're doing. So I think Notion is amazing for that perspective. I'm going to take you inside a Notion where the magic all happens. So when you first come in, there are a couple things. You're going to need to set up an account. You can set up a free account to get started, to really learn how to move around within the software. It's very simple, and I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised that you're going to figure it out very quickly. But once you get set up, the first thing you'll need to do is establish your workspace, and from there, you'll be ready to meet us exactly where this training begins. I'm going to show you what we're going to be working toward over time. Today, we're going to be carving out a tiny sliver of that. We're going to keep our steps very small. I think that anyone can benefit from Notion and databases, and that's who this training is for. If you don't have a background in information systems, you don't know how to code, don't worry. You don't need any of that to be successful at using Notion. Welcome to the Notion home screen. It's got a lot of cool features. In a future training, I'll talk to you about a plugin or a connection that you can add, which is the Notion calendar. It's a great resource and it helps you in so many different ways, especially if you have challenges with time zone and time visualization. Any kind of non-tactile visualization, I have to really put a lot of energy and effort behind being able to see around future corners. Notion Calendar is really awesome for that, especially if you're looking at like people who work here, people who work out of the US. It helps you see different areas side by side. We're going to go into what we at our team are calling the Own Your Ladder Vault. Don't worry, you're not building the whole thing today. We are going to go behind what I call a door. Every single one of these panels represents a doorway to me. And the entire system together is more like a skyscraper. It's a big building that you are building over time to help you manage your career, your life. I think this is human-centered leadership. This is what we're working towards here at Power to Rise. There'll be things that will take you to your vision. It'll take you to your personal journey for health and wellness and fitness and relationships, all those things. But today, we're focusing on one particular door, which is the Career Ladder Hub, and it is designed to help you with your job search process. Now, if you are in the process of looking for your next opportunity, I don't have to tell you, the interview and the application process, by the time you get to the interview, that is amazing. There's so much that goes into reading all the job descriptions, deciding, is this something that I'm going to go for? Am I going to position myself for it? And then you're going to have different versions of your resume depending on the type of role you're applying for. And then as you get later in your career, you may find that there's so many different categories of work that you could be amazing at. You especially need some help with keeping things organized and structured and having some ability to prompt you for how to manage a process over time. That's what this dashboard is designed to do. Don't get too locked into everything you see here. We're going to play around with some of the tabs. We're going to add something that I think is really important to help you in this process. And then we may not pull everything over, but the cool thing is you get to decide what serves your particular journey, what type of roles are you going after, what stage of your career are you at today. And then this is a system and a tool that will grow with you over time. That's the awesome thing. Once you get in the habit of doing it this way, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, gosh, it was 17 years before I decided to leave my company. Now, I applied for roles within the organization many times in between, but you don't apply for jobs like every other month. There's a lot of time gap and you forget the finer details of what was said or what happened. This is a really awesome resource to document what's happening in real time. There's a saying in our culture that goes, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Well, this is very much in that energy. All right, so I'm going to flip over to a clean page. And when I come back, we're going to get started building this out from scratch. It's going to be so much fun. Couple of things you may want to have handy though. Go find a profile picture, a professional headshot that conveys the professionalism or the energy of the work that you do. That's what really matters. I want you to think about who's making the hiring decision and who would need to choose you over a pool of candidates, and find an image that conveys the confidence of what you bring into that role. And I want you to put that there. Another way to do it would be to think about what is the next level role you want to have, or 2 or 3 jobs from now. What is the energy that you would need to convey in that type of role? We're going to put that image on your dashboard because we want to help you future cast. We want to help you step into the energy of who you're becoming higher up the ladder today. I think that there's a lot of power in doing that for you. All right, so we're going to begin with the end in mind. I'm going to show you what the overarching end result is going to be. And the cool thing about building with us is you're going to learn how to do it. You'll also have the option to download a template if you prefer to go ahead and get started with that and just customize from that version. Feel empowered to do so. But for those who want to have greater understanding of the inner workings and the mechanics, you may want to practice how to do these things. This is going to be an awesome place for you to start. I'll also link some resources for other coaches who have really robust training. His name is Thomas Frank, and a lot of how I've learned to build in Notion, I have been self-taught, if you will, by following along with his resources. If you want to get to the nitty-gritty, coming from the most fundamental layer inside of the program, which is the block, and learning how to manipulate some of the finer points of creating different types of tools and resources, which you'll be able to see as we get into this process, I highly recommend taking his fundamentals course. It was so helpful for me, and I think it will be helpful for you too. The first thing we're going to do is give it a name, and we're going to call it the Career Ladder Hub. However, I am going to be building this as an avatar, and I've given her the name Julie Awesome. So Julie Awesome's Career Ladder Hub. Here we go. Now we're going to add a cover. I like stars. I like the idea of space. I think it's very cool. Know that what you can do is once you click add cover, one will be defaulted for you. You could hit change cover and you can look at some of the cool backgrounds that are already pre-selected. Some of them are like art. Others are a little different, but you could also do a simple color that also exists. I like that one. It's stars, but also a mountain. You can upload your own image, which is always helpful. If you have a link, you can do that. But also Unsplash is a gallery of free photos. Look, macaroons or gingerbread cookies, also cool. Feeling the gingerbread cookies. I'm going to leave those there for now. Now, by the time this training is done, I'm going to be extraordinarily hungry and ready for snacks. We'll see how wise of a decision that was over time. Now that we've got our cover image in and it's representing what you want it to be, there's so many different ways. But remember what I said, in Notion, the very fundamental level is a block. What we're on right now would be considered a page. And in Notion, you can enter anything by hitting a backslash key. Once you hit the backslash key, you're going to see that a lot of the basic block commands will come up for you. If you have a paid plan that includes Notion it can be a valuable tool to helping you figure out what you want to build. So depending on the complexity of what you're looking to accomplish, all of the elements are here, but Notion AI is a very helpful resource because maybe you don't know exactly how to build it, but you know how to describe what you want to accomplish. You could type it into the prompt and then the tool will build the structure for you. You could end up looking like a database genius and have very little expertise with constructing them on the back end. That's the day and the times we live in, which I think is such a gift. To build what we're looking to do, I'm going to say there's a couple of things that I want to visualize. So I want to have an image. And this is just to help my brain. You may not need to do this the way that I do, but this is what helps me. I want to have an image and I want to have a section for my bio. What I will do, remember that everything is a block. I am going to create a section where I hit that backslash key, but now I'm going to start typing the word columns and then options come up 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, I just need 2. and you can't quite see it, but they're there. So there's a left like panel of 6 dots to the left of every block. So what I'm going to do is drop that. Did you see the difference? That longer line is a full page or a full line, one column, and this half one shows me where the 2 columns started. So now I'm going to take the other thing that I want to be right beside it, and I'm going to pull it alongside. Now they're on the same line. There's a lot of different ways that you can accomplish what I just did, but with me and my visualization challenges, I found that's the easiest way for me to get to where I want to be. Now that I know that I want my image to be the first thing I see, I'll hit that backslash again and I'll start typing the word image. And there it is. I would typically upload my own, but for the purpose of illustrating Julie Awesome, we're going to just go in and type headshot, and I'll show you all these wonderful pictures that are available for use. And then here on the bio, this is where we can get into a little more fun. So I'm going to say her name is Julie Awesome. I am going to highlight her name, and then you can see menus come up. Rather than being regular text, I'm going to make this a big headline, and then I'm going to create a section. I'm going to hit a space because we're going to put in the bio first. And look, one of the things that I've already noticed, I'm like, oh, we need to make a little change. By default, the page will come in. I prefer a wider view. That's just what I like, to play around with the system and build it however it makes the most sense for you. I just went in and hit that full page width button to pull things out. Now what I'm going to do is create a headline. I'm using my friend ChatGPT, by the way, for our wonderful Julie Awesome. I am going to hit Control V, and I'm going to say, at the time that I am creating this, there's some things that are changing in the landscape of policy. I'm going to play around with some of the words that you see to reflect, ways that we can talk about all the things that Julie Awesome contributes to an organization. But if she happens to work for a government entity in the United States, as of this training in 2025, we are seeing that we have to refocus language away from words that have been mandated or restricted in certain categories. They increase the level of risk. And in a selection process like this, we want you to have as little friction as possible. I say identify the language that conveys who you are in the work that you do, that aligns with your values, but reduces the likelihood of falling through different stages of the process prematurely over the selection of a word, unless that happens to be your core values. If that's who you are, that feedback was not meant for you. Okay? We've got Julie Awesome all staged up. We got her lovely photo. Hey now, look at that eyeshadow. It's popping. I gotta go find me some pink eyeshadow now. One of the things that I encourage is I always start with breaking up my sections, because again, I have this visualization thing. It just makes it easier for me. You can put \div, start typing out the word divider, and that's how you get that nice clean line. This is where we really start getting into layers of preference, if you will. For some, you are going to appreciate different ways to lay out the design of your dashboard. I'm going to show you what I like, and then over time, as you start learning how to change different elements within the system, you can change that. The first thing we're going to do is create a gallery view of a database, and that's what gives you those nice big blocks of pages. So here's one. I'm going to start. We've made a database, but within each entry that you're going to create of the database, it's going to be its own page. And on the page, you can house different sets of information. This is where it starts to get very spiderwebby, if you will, and you can go infinitely in terms of this page behind a page behind a page. Be very thoughtful of how you want to be able to access information. Notion has a tremendous search capability. It is your friend. And I think that if you're using this as a personal hub, or even there are companies that use this as professional dashboard or knowledge hubs, you really benefit from having that AI plan because it'll help you sort through, consolidate, and summarize the information that you're going to be adding to it over time. Just giving you a little bit of that background so that you can make your decisions on how to organize accordingly. As I think about this job search toolkit, the first page that I want us to build that I think is so important, and it didn't even occur to me to add it until very recently, is a page for applications. We're going to create a database tracking system to keep track of all the job descriptions and all of the actual roles that you submit applications for. Over time, it would be very helpful to understand some of the words that are being used in those job descriptions. When you go into higher level roles, let's say 5 years, you may want to come back to some of the words that were used to describe the work that you were hired to do. There's so many benefits for keeping a system like this. Once you got the page set up, you got the structure of the page, we're going to come back in again and type this time INLINE, inline view. And this is that nice table view structure. If you're used to like a Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, this is that similar view, but within a database infrastructure. Databases operate differently than spreadsheets. Always keep that in mind. But in terms of what the layout will look like, very similar. Within that applications view, there are a couple of things. It's really important, I think, to keep the role as the first thing you enter. Why? You'll see in a second. As you enter in lines, we're going to call this Acme Incorporated. For each line item that you're going to enter into this database, the first column is what houses the page that's associated with the line item. Okay, friends, you don't need to have any level of technical understanding of how all this works. I just want you to be aware that it's the thing that you want to be able to look and find it around should be what you put into that first column. Now, I'm going to show you some magic tricks of what we're going to put in later, and it's not going to end up being the last column when we're all said and done. You may want to know, what date did you submit your application? That might be a valuable thing to track, right? Then I think you may want to know, what version of your resume did you submit? Now, I personally keep my resumes on a Google Drive. I like having a folder and keeping everything structured within that system. I'm going to select the link field or property type. Within Notion, these are all of the types of fields that you could create. You can make it an upload field. If you wanted to bring in a file from your hard drive, you could select that. If you were doing something where you needed to keep track of different people who needed to touch work, like a project, if you will, on a team, you could put in a person field so that as the project was moving through the process, you could change the person it was assigned to at any given time. There's so many different ways that you could use a database. I want us to be focused on the current application, so I'm not going to go through all the different types of fields that exist, but just know that sky is the limit. For the purposes of what we're doing, I'm going to say resume version, just so I know. And then I know that indicates link. You may want to have another similar category for cover letter. I think that follow-up contact is going to be very helpful. And this is going to add it as a free text field. So you can just type in the name. I think that's pretty much it, except that I think we also want to have the last date that you interacted on the opportunity. Okay, so now I'm going to move this all the way to the beginning, and it won't hurt anything because that page property has already been assigned to role because we typed that in first. Very important, do it in the right order so it doesn't become an issue. But now you have everything here to track any job that you want into perpetuity over the course of your career. And I think it's super helpful. Another thing that I think I'll just point out here is usually this is a best practice that I follow. When I am applying for a role, I've opened out of the table view and I've opened up the page associated with, oops, with this particular opportunity. We forgot to do something very important because I'm all about making things look great in Notion. Just know that if you did what I did, you made a mistake, there's something I forgot to do, I'm going to enter a new line. I hit the plus sign, and then now I'm just going to move that right back on top. The first thing that I want to do in order to get the pretty picture out front, I want to type in the word image, and then I want to upload the file. Okay, so now that the file is in, let me show you the difference. Now you can see that pretty cover is there. So that's what putting the image in does for you. Now that we've got that in, here's another best practice that I recommend. I actually don't think you need the second title unless you have a creative thing that you want to name it. So I don't like it there. I'm going to hit hide database title because I think that this is more than sufficient. Now that we have the database in for the applications, I'm going to do some more things to the page. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to make sure that it is full width. And now I'm going to come back in and add a divider to give us a new section to work with. And from here, I'm going to add a heading that says job experience. I'm going to make that stand out a little bit more by adding a little color to it. So not only is it going to have its own highlight, now we're going to create some sections underneath that. This is my advice. If you are in the middle of a job search process, have you ever had to enter in every single job section? I want you to do this. Use our friend, the toggle feature, and you can use toggle 2, 1, 3, whatever works for you. Job number 1. Of course, you're going to give these the actual title. So let's say your role was Director of Operations. Let's say your title is Director of Operations at the Cleveland Clinic. You come in, and then I would just recommend you can put in /bullet and say impact statement 1, and you'll just keep doing this. However you would define it on your resume or list it in the application process, just go ahead, do yourself a favor and put that here in this toggle section. Because as you go to, I want to show you how to easily organize that information. And then one more thing that I highly recommend, especially if, again, you are going to be using this over the entirety of your career, 10 years from now, you're going to be doing work that's likely very different from what you're doing right now. And you may find yourself applying for a role where it's like this experience that you had a decade ago really matters in this new position that you're going for, but it's been so long and the finer details may escape you. But what if you have the ability to go back in and track the way the role was described, and in other areas of our vault, you will be able to capture your personal stories and wins. But this is a really good tool for you. I recommend Putting in a section here, I like to use, again, a toggle feature because I like to be able to collapse information. And what I would do is put in a section for the job description, and I would include that information here because it is really valuable to understand the way an employer describes their ideal candidate. Even if you get the role, let's say you are selected and you get started into that role, a year from now, it'll be time for you to write your performance review. Or hopefully before then, you'll be meeting with your leadership and you'll be reviewing how things are going into the role. It's extraordinarily important for you to be able to communicate how the role was described as you articulate how you've approached the work. It's important to understand that roles do evolve and job descriptions evolve over time. I cannot tell you how many times the job was described as version A, and by the time I got into the role, we were at project like description X, Y, and Z because it was a rapidly evolving dynamic. I say this because I want to acknowledge that things can change, and your best case scenario is usually to pivot and evolve with the organization. Also true, there are times where conflict will come up and you'll need to deploy some kind of resolution tactics. It is really important to understand the source of conflict is misaligned expectations, in my humble opinion. And so I think that if you ask yourself the question, well, what was expected when you entered into a process? How was it described to you? What did you mutually agree to? Then it helps become the guide for finding the place at which your expectations started to diverge. That is usually the place that you can identify where conflict begins. Anyway, there's my free tip for for the day. Let's get back to building the solution. But I want you to understand why I just deeply feel like this tool is so valuable on so many levels. I think it'll save you a lot of struggle because it'll help you objectively see things in a place where you can examine and consider it. And then your decision making is a lot faster when you do it that way. Okay, so now that you've got your first tab up, I'm going to move through this a lot faster. You probably see me do a little double tap on this. Okay, so now let's come back out and let's take a quick peek. I went in and added just the names to all of the screens that we created, just like I showed you in applications. So now they all have the same graphic image. Now we can go behind the scenes of each one of these doorways, if you will, and think about how do we want to customize the pages. So for resume, what you can do here in the dashboard link that we're going to give you, there are templates that you can use. You can go into Canva and you can play around with their template library as well. And you can build out the resume that you want to use. Now, here's my advice for you as someone who is not an executive coach, as someone who does not specialize in coaching around the interview process. What I'm sharing with you are tools and resources to help inform your research and to keep you organized as you maneuver through this type of process. I always recommend consulting with a specialized coach in this, especially someone who is knowledgeable about the type of industry you are pursuing. I say find a headhunter and find an executive coach that can help you navigate this process a lot simpler. From a background and resources standpoint, this is what I want you to consider. There is the version of the resume that you carry in with you to the interview table. And then there is the version of a resume that you submit to an applicant tracking system. They are two different concepts. I want to be very clear about that. When I say go into Canva and find a layout that catches the eye and has the information organized in a way, it's designed to help you navigate a conversation. but those layouts may or may not be optimized to navigate the applicant tracking system. Look for templates that specifically speak to being able to help you with the structure and to be able to get the formatting in a way that will pull into those systems for full readability and algorithmic performance. That's what's really important in those applicant tracking systems. Okay. So keep that in mind. We're going to have, I like to use this as a toggle feature, but you could do it a couple of different ways. I'll show you. One is toggle one, where, oops, all right, perfect. We'll just do it this way. And we're going to call this the applicant tracking system version. And of course, I think you need an inline version of the database for this. I think you probably don't need that second tag, so I'm going to hide it. Now I'm going to enter out of that. I'm going to hit a divider. And then we're going to do the interview room version. And we're going to call this one. We're going to call this interview and probably take this out of toggle mode, but you could also, you can put it in. And then it's the same concept of what we created in the other view. You just may want to have a deeply focused section of all your resumes. This way, many times you're looking for the context of a category or a type of role before you get to the layer of position. Now, if you're applying for an actual role, it makes sense to put it there. But I would think about those big categories of jobs and start having a ready to go version that could be your baseline. So when the next position comes up, you can use that and adapt from that to fine tune and tailor it to the individual needs. I do think it's important to have both a category level resume and a role specific resume tracking system at your disposal. Just another quick thing here. It bothers me. I don't know why I'm this way, but I really prefer the white page over the narrow version. Another thing, I'm the queen of color coding because I just visually can't see things as well as I once could. Here's something to be aware of when you want to use color coding in Notion. I wish there was a way, and maybe there is, and I just don't know about it. I wish there was a way that you could only highlight the headline section of a toggle. The way that I use it, anything within the toggle, including this database section, would get the colors. Just keep that in mind and play with it accordingly. Now you have both ways of doing it and you can make it work. Now you see the benefit of the toggles. As things get longer or lengthy with more fields, you'll be able to collapse that information and make it much easier to view. Okay, we've done the section for the resume. Another cool thing that I'll show you is, in addition to tracking the resume itself, I've gone in and created this example of Julie Awesome's resume. I am going to, first of all, make sure that it's public. So anyone with the link, you can see it. I'm going to copy this because I want you to see what it looks like. With Notion, you can bring in a link. So I could preview it. You can play around with how all of these look visually. The ones that I use most often are the mention, which just gives you a quick little blurb. You could also embed, and this has a lot of benefit for what we're talking about here. So you could play with those. You see those little grabby corners, I like to call them. I'm sure there's a more technical term that I don't know of, but it allows you to bring in that resume so that you don't have to click all the way into the link of seeing it on the drive if there's something that you just need to see real quick, right? And you can still use the copy and paste feature, which is really helpful. But if you needed to go back out to the drive to get to the actual file, you can just click that arrow and it'll take you right there. So that is the magic of Notion and why I absolutely love it. And I think everyone benefits from having Notion in their life. just makes the organization and keeping of things so much simpler. Now that you can easily keep track of your resume, there's another tab here that we're going to create for cover letter in case that is something that you want to house as well. I think that this tool makes sorting and organizing all your job search materials so much easier. With the bios, same thing we talked about up front. I'm just going to copy and paste this version of Julie Awesome's bio. Then we're going to come back in and I'm going to show you why I think having a separate tab is so important. I think for this, you want to do something like always a divider to separate the spaces because I'm that way. I think that let's say you had one for speaking engagements. Remember that everything that you put into the first column is going to have its own page. So you could store that. But let's say you also needed to have, I don't know, let's call it social media bios. Just leave it there and we'll say you need to have a bio for LinkedIn. You need to have a bio for, and I'm going to do this a little differently. I like toggles. They are my favorite thing in the world. You need to have a version for LinkedIn. You need to have a version for, I don't know, Facebook. And then another one could be Instagram. All right, so you're gonna build these out and I won't go through the training of how to write them all today, but you get the point. You can collapse them and have them as well so that when you need to make an update or a change, very easy to do. There's so many different applications of why you might need different versions of a bio. Let's say you're a speaker and there's different themes or conferences or meeting focuses that pull and draw upon different areas of your thought leadership. You want to start saving and housing all of the different versions that could exist out in the world in a single place. It becomes easier over time to create those. Now, in this day and age, if you're going through an interview process, highly recommend having not only a resume, not only cover letter, but also having a presentation and a portfolio that you can take with you. Sometimes these are virtual interviews where you'll have to be on a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams and present at a high level, like who you are, what you bring. Sometimes they don't tell you that's what you're doing. Sometimes what'll happen is, oh, I want you to meet with so and so. And you're like, okay, no problem. It's an informal conversation. And maybe it's not a 20-page deck, but maybe it's one or two high impact slides and visuals that you can use as you're having the conversation so that it helps make you more memorable. I want you to always have this resource prepared and ready to go. You don't necessarily need to use it in every scenario of an interview, but I think it's best to have a baseline to update from versus having to recreate something on the turn of dime when it's like you find out you have an interview like in 3 days. Okay, so now that you know how to build all the things, I'm going to quickly walk you through what your template will mostly look like. When you get it, it will have the section of the applications already refined and added to this. But you're going to notice that when you go into sections like, let's say, presentation, you're going to be able to click into that Canva link and you'll be able to get that template that we talked about and make it your own. That's why we didn't spend a lot of time building that out per se during the tutorial. You just need to be able to have the infrastructure to house the page, and then you can use your own documents or the vast library that exists within Canva to make each one of the sub-tabs your own. That's what we're going to cover today. I would love to know, what questions do you have? Especially if you are new to databases, feel free to drop them in the comments. I will be sure to keep an eye and answer them. If you need any additional resources, you can also check, the caption section. I'll also make sure that we include that downloadable resource for you so that you can build your own, customize the one that exists, or somewhere in between. Finally, I just want to thank you for spending time with us, learning how to use Notion, learning a little bit about how you can structure and organize data within it. If you start building on this skill little by little, the future and the possibilities ahead of you are endless because there are so many applications for these tools. You are going to find that you can create anything that your mind dreams up just by learning how to maneuver within the blocks and then how to layer some of those elements together. So be on the lookout for those things. I'll add that training to Thomas J. Frank's tutorials as well. More than anything, I wanted to thank you for sharing in this space, listening to my story. I hope that you found some of it, meaningful. I hope it inspires you in some way. I hope that what you got out of it is that even if you have challenges, like I have real cognitive processing challenges around data visualization, and it does not stop me from working in a space that deals with a lot of data and structuring and visualization and mapping skills. So you can get better, you can learn hacks, you can learn tips and tricks. The first step is just really understanding what your unique challenges are and what are the different ways that you may need to process information or what tools you might need to use alongside your learning journey to help you integrate that information better. Wherever you are, I hope you know that you are in the driver's seat of your future and that there are people and resources waiting for you out in the world that can help you navigate to wherever you want to go. Be sure to drop those comments. Let me know what you might want to learn next. We'll see if we can get that added into the training rotation. I hope that until we meet again, you are well on your way to reaching for whatever your stars may be. Bye for now.